/languages and look for the globe.
State Circle is made by MPT to serve all of our diverse communities and is made possible by the generous support of our members. Thank you.
Connecting Marylanders to their government. This is State Circle.
Good evening. Welcome to State Circle. Coming up tonight, who are the tech migrants and could they be coming to a town near you? That's ahead. We begin tonight with a new perspective on the life of Freddie Gray. Mr. Gray's death in police custody 5 years ago touched off violent protests and helped to fuel the Black Lives Matter movement. The new book is 5 Days, the Fiery Reckoning of an American City. We spoke with author Wes Moore, the Baltimore-raised Rhodes Scholar, Army combat veteran, and now CEO of the Robin Hood Foundation.
What this book really does is it walks through 5 days in a major American city through the eyes of 8 people, all from different backgrounds, all from different perspectives. And the thing that it really shows is that, first of all, how quickly a major city imploded upon itself because we were not dealing with chronic and long-term issues that the city had been dealing with and suffering from, but we had not come up with long-term solutions for them. And the second piece, and the second thing I really want to do with this story, was understand that while everyone focused so much on Freddie Gray's death and what happened and how he died, which we should have, the reality is we did not spend enough time talking about the horror of Freddie Gray's life and the systemic challenges that existed every single day that Freddie lived, so that that 1 week that he was in a coma was arguably the most peaceful week of his life. And that's what I wanted to explore.
Was he born addicted? I think I read that, before he drew his first breath, he came into the world as an addict.
That's exactly right. I mean, Freddie, to understand Freddie and these 25 years on this planet, it is important to understand how those 25 years started. Those 25 years started that he was born premature and underweight and addicted to heroin. He was born to a mother who battled addiction for much of her life. She never made it to high school. She could not read nor write. She lived in chronic poverty, deep poverty, her entire life. And when she gave birth to Freddie and his twin sisters, they moved into a housing project over in North Carey Street, over in West Baltimore. And in 2009, that house, along with 480 other homes, were actually cited in a civil lawsuit because of the endemic levels of lead inside of the home that Freddie Gray grew up in. So you think about the fact that the CDC indicates that if someone has 6 microbes of lead in every deciliter of blood, that person will have cognitive damage for the remainder of their life. Freddie Gray had 36. And so you're absolutely right, Jeff. This is a young man who was born underweight, premature, addicted to heroin, lead poisoned, and by that time in his life, he was 2 years old. And so that was the point that I wanted to try to stress and have people understand, is that when people are talking about individuals who are living in poverty, and particularly deep poverty, concentrated poverty, and the argument comes down to, well, that person should just work harder. How hard would Freddie Gray have to have worked in order to overcome the challenges that young man saw in the 25 years of his life?
Makes me think about the story of your first book, The Other Wes Moore, who was born, help me with the facts, not too far from you, somebody who also grew up single parent. And I should mention, we know your mom, longtime MPT board member, and a terrific person, and obviously a big part of the reason why this Wes Moore is the huge success that he is. But the other Wes Moore ended up a statistic, right? Does that track a Freddie Gray path?
Very much so, and it tracks a Freddie Gray path where I feel like oftentimes in our society, we are so quick to either congratulate or to castigate without actually being able to dig into and investigate the circumstances that help people get to where they got to. And so you're absolutely right. In some ways, the same exploration that I went through with the other Wes Moore, where when I first learned about Wes, it was through wanted posters and newspaper articles, and my mom, getting long distance phone calls about the fact that there were wanted posters in my neighborhood. And I learned more about Wes, and I learned more about this crime that he is now still serving a life sentence in prison for. But the fact that by the time of his arrest, we were living blocks away from each other. We both grew up in single parent households. We both had academic and disciplinary troubles. We both felt the feeling of handcuffs on our wrists at very young ages. And so it really did kind of beg this question of why? And what does that journey look like? And then if we understand the journey, what then can we as a larger society do to actually make opportunity and ambition actually have the chance of meeting one another? And those are many of the parallels that I was able to draw in these individual stories.
All right, to get to talking about the solutions that you have in mind, we should explain what you're doing now. You're in New York. You're the CEO of a large foundation, the Robin Hood Foundation, that, if I read it right, made over $100 million in grants in the New York City area last year. You have a board of directors that is gold-plated, A-list names in finance, 1%ers. You have connections, you have resources. What are you doing that's making an impact in New York City?
Well, I think about the fact that, it actually reminds me when I was first actually asked to become the CEO of Robin Hood, my first initial answer was actually no. And I told them I had a bunch of reasons why. One, I said, listen, I'm a Marylander, and I'm not moving I'm not moving to New York, even though we're based in New York, even though Robin Hood is one of the largest foundations in the country. I told them that I was enjoying what I was doing. I was working on assisting students who were making entry into college, first generation, first and family students. And I told them that I was skeptical of philanthropy, that I thought that simply just writing checks was not going to solve the larger problems unless you were dealing with the structural issues. And eventually they came back and they said, well, what if we told you on the first one you don't have to move? And so we haven't. We've stayed in Maryland, and I just commute. The second piece was we think this is actually an interesting opportunity to test the theory, because we agree with you that just writing checks is not going to be enough, and you're not going to come up with $1 million solutions to $1 trillion problems. And so I think about the work we've been able to do at Robin Hood, and it's actually been exactly that. It's been actually rethinking the way the foundation does its work and focusing on things like that in addition to using data and metrics to find and fund and identify the most effective community serving organizations around, which we always historically have done, but it also is doing things like we built out an entire policy wing. Because I don't know how you can be in the work of anti-poverty work without understanding the role that policy is playing. We have policies in place that are both putting people and keeping people in poverty. We've been able to expand outside of New York and actually create initiatives where we're investing in places all over the country, to include Baltimore City. And so the thing that actually makes me really excited is this is about how do we have a collective conversation about a societal build. And I've been able to see the American economy at work from a variety of different perspectives and standpoints. But the exciting thing about right now is that despite the fact we're watching an explosion of need, we actually can fortify and mobilize an explosion of concerned people who are willing to pull every single lever at our disposal to be able to address it. And that's very much the phase we're in.
I try to be an optimist. There are things to be optimistic about, but in the pandemic environment, the schools are really challenged. Urban schools doubly challenged, because if you're going to go all distance learning technology, the hardware, the connectivity, the know-how may not be there in some households, and you may have a generation of kids, maybe some Freddie Grays out there, who are going to basically miss a year of school. Do you agree with that? How do we deal with that?
Oh, I absolutely agree that we have some significant headwinds ahead of us. Right. One of the big issues that we spend time on and focus on is this issue of one of them is summer learning loss. Right. What happens between the months of June and the months of September, and how many students we will lose during that time period if they're not doing educational assets, if they're not building educational capacity during that time period. It'll take till November for them to catch up where they left off in June. What about if we have a student who hasn't been in the classroom since February? Right? And we know that for many students, particularly our students, Maryland students, they're not going to go back in person come September. And so I am very concerned about what that means and what that's going to look like, particularly when you consider the fact that nationally, somewhere between 15 to 25% of our students do not have stable Wi-Fi or internet access. So they cannot keep up, by its nature, cannot keep up with the coursework that's coming on board. And so this actually becomes a chance for us to truly rethink how we are going to go about our educational processes, where we have got to be able to get more federal support to be able to make sure that every single child has technological assets, tablets, computers, etc. And then it's not just about the question of, does a family have a computer? What if there are 4 kids? If you have a computer, congratulations, you have 1 computer for 4 children to now be able to do their coursework. We have to be able to make sure that there's Wi-Fi and connectivity inside of every single one of our homes. And there should be a national plan to have the entire country connected by, to make sure that we don't lose these assets. We should be able to have real conversations about everything from school year to school day to credentialing. So this actually presents a moment for us to say, if we were to genuinely put everything on the table and find out really creative ways to support our teachers, support our administrators, and support our students and our families, what would that look like? If we had the chance to really recreate a system that is making sure that particularly our most vulnerable, and particularly the ones who have been consistently and chronically left behind, are actually moved to the front. What would that look like in our society? And the beautiful thing actually about education in many ways, it's even more than federally, that's a state conversation. That's a conversation that the state of Maryland needs to be having. The same as a conversation that the state of Delaware should be having for their kids. And so that's the exciting thing about this moment, is that we have a chance to grab something unique.
Wes Moore, the author of 5 Days, The Fiery Reckoning of an American City. Wes, we appreciate the time.
I appreciate the time. It's great seeing you. Thank you.
Our thanks to Wes Moore, author of 5 Days, The Fiery Reckoning of an American City. Still ahead tonight, a futurist take on the pandemic and what the future might hold.
Can you tell us what you know?
Turning back now to the race for the White House.
The State Board of Elections voted Thursday to set up a new election.
It must be a very emotional day.
The world changed in the blink of an eye.
Children are at the heart of this story.
Our newsmaker this week is futurist Amy Webb, author of The Big Nine, How the Tech Titans and Their Thinking Machines Could Warp Humanity. And Amy is the founder of the Future Today Institute. Delighted to have you back on MPT.
Thank you so much for having me back. I really appreciate it.
So the future has arrived kind of early this year. There's all these incredible trends that have been accelerated. One of them, you noted in a recent thread on Twitter, is the idea that many employers are having people work from home, and they're extending the time frame on that. What are you most focused on?
Right. So, there's some interesting components that go into working from home. Part of this is a reduction of real estate costs. If you run a company and you don't need everybody to be in that building, or you can't have them, you can reduce some of your operating costs. Some companies are also finding that, as difficult as it can be for their employees to work from home, for some of them, their productivity is going up. But I think the real issue here is that we don't have a vaccine. There is no real timeline that anybody can depend on at this point. And businesses have to make decisions. So out in Silicon Valley, Google has already announced that it'll be a year before any of their employees come back to the office. Facebook has made numerous public announcements that they're gonna try to transition to a permanent work from home situation for a lot of people. We are starting to see pretty big differences in our approaches to where we do our work for those people who have the kinds of jobs that can be done from home, which is not everybody.
Of course, and certain industries, healthcare, service businesses, it's not easy to do it. But you think about some of the cities that have had great runs. You think about San Francisco and how the tech boom has changed that town. And then you think about Baltimore, where the offshoring of manufacturing, automation of a lot of manufacturing has had the opposite effect. You see an opportunity here.
I absolutely do. So if you look at cities like San Francisco and Austin, over a relatively short period of time, there was a massive influx of people. And while that certainly put a strain on local public work systems, and transportation and traffic and things like that, there's no question it buoyed the local economy to heights that nobody previously imagined. What we know to be true is that we're seeing a wave of tech migrants. So, with all of these people who have the ability to work from home, home could be anywhere as long as there's a strong internet connection and, they have access to transportation and the other facets of daily living to support what they do. So we're already seeing people who work in the tech sector leave for the idyllic plains of Colorado and the mountains of Colorado, and they're going out to other coastal areas. There are some communities that are now actively courting these people who are highly trained, highly skilled, already have jobs. And the idea is that maybe in a few years, if they really embed within a community, that they leave Google or they leave Facebook and they begin to work in an established local company that maybe before didn't have access to that type of tech talent. That presents an enormous opportunity for a city like Baltimore. I've always thought I'm not from here originally. I am here by marriage, and in New York City the other half of the week where I work. I've always thought it was strange that Baltimore has some world-class institutions. It's one of the best places in the world for health and medical research. We've got, defense research in our backyard. We've got aerospace. We have all kinds of things, and yet somehow the city of Baltimore can't get its act together. So my thought was, if there was a way to court these people who are already looking for the kinds of things that Baltimore offers, once things reopen, we've got great restaurants. There is plenty of available housing. That if we were able to court some of these people, and if there was a long-term vision. So thinking through the next order impact so that this doesn't just become gentrification, but rather a way to organically grow the economy over a long period of time, now is a good opportunity, because if Baltimore doesn't act, there are all these other cities that are.
When you write about tech migrants, my brain goes to the Grapes of Wrath, except I see people carrying, MacBooks and the resource they're looking for, they're looking for good 5G connections. And I guess, we have that stuff. What else? And we may not, if you're just focused on Baltimore City, have gotten a handle on the crime problem and gotten schools to the level that they need to be. But if you were local officials, what would you tell them?
Right, so there is no plan. The city has no plan, and it instead has a rotating cast of characters that are elected, which again is not unique to the city of Baltimore. We see this in other cities around the country. This is how our local city governments are organized. We don't have a full-time city manager who is divorced from those elected officials who come and go, or who kind of stay in their roles forever. And as a result, we don't have a long-term plan. And if you don't have a long-term vision for what the city could become and the right public partnerships in place to make that happen, then you wind up, there's stasis. There is no way, stasis and entropy, right? There is no way to move forward. So this isn't just about doing the reverse of what Baltimore did during the H2Q debacle, which, Jeff, I'm sure you remember, when Baltimore, among other cities, was trying to court Amazon to come here. If the city was willing to give, the types of economic concessions, tax breaks, other things to get Amazon to come here, why wouldn't you think through a strategic plan to get people who have great skills to come into the city, to do their jobs here, to spend their money here, to send their kids to public schools here? This is how, over time, you start to reshape our schools to make them better, you wind up with more reforms around the city. And again, with planning, this doesn't become a story of gentrification. It becomes a story of economic renewal. But it's not going to happen by accident or by hope or by happenstance. It's going to take a coordinated effort.
Do you think, Amy, that some of the things that have happened this year are permanent? Hopefully the virus is not permanent, but the trends that have accelerated in terms of remote work, remote education, remote entertainment, does that roll back at some point, or is a lot of this here to stay?
So I think the question that I'm getting asked a lot is, what is the new normal? I think what people are actually asking when they ask that question is, when will things stop changing so much? Because we're sort of living in a daily chaos. So what the new normal looks like, I don't know, because there's still so many variables at play, but we do know that there will be long-term challenges. The fact that if schools, I think in the state of Maryland, some schools are starting, most schools are starting. I think it's highly probable that schools will have to shut down. We've already seen plenty of examples of this elsewhere in the country. So what are the longer term ramifications of not being prepared to deliver a quality education to Maryland's and Baltimore's students? We're not going to know the answer to that question next year. We'll probably start to see some changes in test scores, but we're going to see what the permanent changes that elicited 10 years from now, when those kids are trying to enter college or trying to enter the workforce. We're going to look back and with regret, wishing that we had done something different. And the kicker here is that there's plenty of things that we could be doing differently. No, we're not going to wire everybody's home for full connectivity and distribute a laptop to every kid. That's implausible given the financial circumstances of this area. That being said, we could have absolutely come up with other plans. Right now, the plans that a lot of public schools have come up with are merely, they merely have to do with the schedule. And unfortunately, that's not enough. But I could tell that exact same story about education as I could for other things like the supply chain, the entertainment industry, and so forth and so on. So the bottom line is, yes, we are living through a catastrophe, but a catastrophe can also be a really good catalyst for positive change. But we have to make a decision that the future that we're going to inherit is better than the present situation that we're living through right now.
And the same broadband access that's important for kids with their Chromebooks is the same thing that makes an area livable for a tech migrant, right?
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Because of the work that I do, I know folks who work in the cable and telecommunications industry. I am an independent researcher, so I'm not on anybody's side. That being said, I know that in a lot of cities, and this includes Baltimore, but a lot of cities around the country, cable companies have come in with the promise of higher speed. They've tried to lay fiber, and the cities have made it real difficult for that to happen for a whole bunch of different reasons. Again, I think this is a lack of forethought. Where do we need to make short-term sacrifices for the longer-term good? I just don't see that happening at all in the city. I see the city being poorly managed, it's really heartbreaking because there is so much here. There are good stories to be told about Baltimore, but unfortunately, the stories that the outside world knows about are a result of bad management.
Now, MPT's Sue Copen takes us to a brand new community resource, a very modern new library.
When it comes to libraries, some things never change.
I love to read.
Third grader June Stegnero is checking out a stack of books almost as big as she is from the new and newly opened Annapolis Library. The previous library was raised 2 years ago to make way for this state-of-the-art facility. The loss of the library during construction, coupled with the shutdown from the pandemic, was challenging for library regulars.
I mean, the library was a habitual part of our lives. So to move online, it's just not the same experience. And my kids love to hold books. not necessarily read books digitally.
Opening the library during the COVID-19 pandemic has created a whole new set of challenges, like making certain everyone who comes in has a face mask.
We have a lovely partnership with our county's Department of Health, who supplied 30,000 face masks for customers to wear who need them, and we are happy to hand them out right as you come into the entrance of the library.
And there are additional accommodations.
Some of the other things that we've incorporated are social distancing features. We have some circles to guide customers so that they know where to stand at checkout. You'll notice on the floor we have directional arrows.
There's a meeting room where return books are relegated for 96 hours before they're allowed back in circulation. But this library, named for the late Maryland House Speaker and Annapolis native Mike Bush, was actually designed with the local community in mind.
We have the red brick outside that harkens back to our colonial days here. When you come up to the library, when you drive up or walk to the library, you will see that there is some blue tile that sparkles. That is replica of the Chesapeake Bay.
And there's a new area called a makerspace. It's off limits for now, but when it finally opens, it will provide some hands-on opportunities.
What it is things like a sewing machine, so you make something, a button maker. You can use a heat press.
This is a facility that will eventually house some 85,000 items for the public's use. In this digital age, some might question whether books should still be included. Library officials say absolutely yes.
We have a holds list that we run every day, was 450 pages long. On average, there are eight items on a page. People still want to read a book.
Sue, thank you. That is State Circle for this week. For all of us at MPT, thanks for watching and have a good night.
This program was made by MPT to serve all of our diverse communities.
Tonight on MPT.
One channel really changed Maryland in 1969.
We were everywhere.
Now take a look back at your favorite MPT programs.
Welcome to Hodgepodge Lodge.
And meet the creative people who put us on the air.
We set out to do it right.
Tune in for 5 decades of television excellence.
I loved that show.
All made possible by viewers like you.
People would discover us.
Celebrate 50 years of Maryland Public Television.
Tonight at 9. You're watching MPT. Be informed. Be entertained. Be inspired.
Looking for MPT's 4 channels in your area? Search by provider at mpt.org/channels.